Firstly, a big welcome to, I think this is our 7th Cloud Comm Summit in the UK. Obviously, some of you know we now do it in the US and also 3 other European countries. So I'm up first, as is traditional, and I'm going to be talking a little bit around how we see the face of the market changing and what we're seeing change. And really, we see it changing in 2 ways. And I did write these slides before this outbreak, but I think we're all sure now that enterprises recognize that they must change the way they work. And as Dom will go through later, we did a very large piece of enterprise research, and Dom will explain why we did that. And really what that showed was some really interesting trends. And they're not, you might say, well, Matt, we know about remote working, you're kind of boring us about that. But what we're seeing is 83% of, this is the European market, who are already offering remote working in terms of enterprises of all different sizes. And that's set to grow. So both grow in terms of the numbers. I think it is planned to go up to, I think it was almost 89% in the next couple of years. So it's going to grow in terms of penetration, but the intensity grows. And it's not only the large enterprises. Some very small businesses we were surveying, have more than 50% of their workers now working remotely. And I guess the one thing that's clear, outcome of what's happened over the last few weeks, this is going to be on the top of anybody's agenda. The other thing that is interesting is a growth in subcontractors. I don't know about your businesses, but certainly my business, my colleague's business, we employ probably about 30 to 40% of our workforce as subcontractors. And again, the amount of businesses that are offering subcontractors, and that is set to grow as well. The other thing which was interesting in terms of a headline was the increase in automation. So businesses thinking that automation, 37% of them thought that automation is going to save them jobs in the next 2 years. So automation changing the way we work. And the last one, which isn't from our research, and we should have sourced it, but is the growth in cloud applications. So I see various figures about the number of cloud applications every business has used, huge numbers, but this was talking about 8 different per employee, different cloud applications that people are now assessing. And you say, well, what does this all mean? This means if you're trying to address collaboration or you're trying to address a customer need, you now have to think in this context. You now are not dealing with sites where people went to work and they all worked in an environment. You're now working with a very dispersed workforce. Quite a lot of that workforce won't be employees, so that gives challenges around security and other things, and people looking to automate and to save jobs. So we've got kind of a new internal way of working and a new sort of context to internal work. The other thing that's happening is a focus on customer engagement. So I've been a firm believer for the last 2 or 3 years that where there is still a lot of value is if you can improve the relationship between the customer and its customer. And that's becoming clearer. So the image there is from a company called Nextiva. Some of you will know them. They're one of the biggest independent US providers who've been one of the first guys really to focus in terms of their offering on customer experience and how they can improve the customer experience for their customers. As globalization leads to an increasing competition, it's clearer and clearer that the enterprises need a focus on how they communicate to their customers. And sometimes we get lost, I think, as an industry in, well, that's contact center. That's a specific defined market, and that is something that these clever people do over in the corner. No, customer engagement is a problem and an opportunity for everybody and all service providers. And you have to think about it in the way that you address the market. So these are just some of the figures. I guess you don't need to be convinced. Well, maybe you do need to be convinced, but customer experience is key now to success for your enterprises. And therefore, you better be thinking about how you're going to address that as an issue within your solutions. The other news that came out of our enterprise research is your customers are looking for you to help them. And when they look to choose, when we asked them why we surveyed 1,800 companies, and Don will go into more of this detail later. But when we asked those companies what is the most important thing when you are choosing a supplier, excellent and trustworthy advice comes top. And you'll see later it's not price, it's not advanced solutions, well, it is providing experience and providing advice. So, you've got a changing workforce, which nobody will disagree with me now, and you've got this focus potentially on customer experience and how I can become more competitive as a business, and they're coming to you for the solution. So how are you answering that call? What are you doing as an industry to solve that problem? So some of the questions you're going to get, and I guess you are getting already and came up in our research, were the ones like this. You know, and I guess you're going to have more and more of the questions around business continuity and remote working, right? These are the questions that are going to be asked of you. And a big question that I'm hearing quite a lot now in our research is, how do I secure this environment? It's becoming a more and more important question as well. As I've ended up with all these gig employees who work everywhere, who work in different ways, how the hell do I secure them is a big issue. Probably the second biggest issue is, how the hell do I go on this journey? How do you take me from point A to point B, and how are you going to do it? How are you going to provide me with the advice to do that? How are you going to, at the same time, give me visibility and keep my costs down? So there is no doubt that the customer environment's changing. I think there's no doubt that there's value to be had both in enabling that through collaboration and enabling a better customer experience. But I think the challenge for you and businesses that we're working on from a strategy point of view is being very clear on what is the customer need you're trying to address. Being very clear on what you are trying to address with your proposition. And there's some challenges in that, right? There's some big challenges, because this differs massively. And in our research, again, Don will take you through some later, that shows one man's collaboration isn't the same as another man's collaboration. One business is very different. You know, just in terms of, I was talking with one of the speakers who's speaking later, who said, Matt, one of the things we find a lot is regulatory issues. You know, regulatory is a dimension on this, you know, in terms of how people want to buy different collaboration services. For your reference, and the Cisco employees who haven't been there, that is the Cisco boardroom in Santa Clara, where I was earlier this week. So some people have fairly big boardrooms. Businesses, very different sizes. Probably the biggest table I've ever seen. Apparently, if you get called to it, it's not a good news. So probably good if you haven't seen it. You know, there's businesses which have very, very different needs. And we've got to be very clear with what's the customer need we're addressing and what is the specific segment within that we're going to target, because it's very different. And the threat, of course, is that if we carry on providing just a small part of the solution, if we do really say we're going to address collaboration for customers, or we're really going to address these wider solutions, and we come with a very small point solution, we might be out of business in a few years. I doubt there's anybody old enough in the room. I'm looking around for Dave Dadds, he might be old enough. Who can remember? Oh, Dave, there you are. Were you a bowling pin placer as a kid? I used to do the switchboard. Ah. So, I mean, there's various jobs where people just didn't react and they just carried on offering the same solution. And I guess, just looking at collaboration, you know, can you afford to be in a silo? You know, when we're looking at what people are using, what their tools they're using, and again, I say it because I'm ruining Dom's thunder, he loves that. He's going to talk about, in our research, how people are looking at growing some of these tools. But can you afford just to be siloed in one of these areas? It struck me as I was in Santa Clara at the Cisco building that, you can leverage a number of these things. And just offering maybe the telephony into this, is it a viable long-term strategy? Just playing a bit part in that puzzle. And for years, and some of the guys from Poly here used to say to me, Matt, why won't your VoIP guys ever sell anything to do with video and meetings? Why won't they do it? And I was like, well, I don't know. They seem to just be really focused on the telephony. Well, I think that time's going to change. I think if you are really going to address collaboration, you're probably going to have to offer some more things other than your silo that you're focused in at the moment, would be my guess, to be competitive. I looked into time, and when I grew a beard, and maybe I'll have a granddaughter one day, and I figured this might be what some of us might be saying to our grandchildren in the future. I used to provide the telephony into those collaboration solutions, And she'll probably look at us and say, what? You used to do what? Well, yeah, that was my job. Yeah. We might be the same people who are putting the pins on the in the bowling alleys with my friend Dave. So, in terms of, I've got an image now. I just can't get it out of my head. Just you there.
What are you saying about our service, mate?
No, I'm not saying about your service. No. Sorry, no. I wasn't linking the two. You're clearly you boss are clearly bringing all the pins together and making it work as a solution, right? But, you like that? Keep your sponsors happy. And I started to think a little bit. Now, people would say, I'm not on the map, Matt. You haven't put my logo up here yet. And we haven't deliberately. They can't put everybody's logo up here. But I was starting to think about what the kind of market map looks like. And I haven't put the soft switch providers on here who are enabling. So clearly, some of the guys, like Meta and NetSapiens and Cisco and all the guys who are downstairs. I haven't put those. These were the companies who really I thought were facing the customer. So facing the end customer. And I was starting to think about all these different groups who are involved in kind of providing this solution and how this might play out. Because what we're clearly seeing is these different groups looking to leverage their position. So surely we've got the traditional premise comms guys looking to leverage their position in the premise to take people to the cloud. We can see that very clearly. We're starting to see the contact center guys leveraging their position to bring people into the cloud. We've obviously clearly got the collaboration guys trying to expand their role. We're starting to see some of the productivity guys extend their roles and partnerships establish. We've got the cloud guys, so AWS and others, trying to leverage their position with the enterprise to build capability. So we're starting to see these people realize that they've all got a role here. And in the real battle, and people say, Matt, who's going to win, Is this all going to be Microsoft? Is it all going to be Cisco? Is it all going to be Salesforce? And I don't think there's a clear answer to that. But what we're clearly going to see is people understanding their position and leveraging their roles and their relationship with the customer. And what's that already doing is realizing that partnership becomes a necessity. So as you look, if you're looking to deliver a broader solution, the one thing that's clear is partnership within this map is already happening. So, you could look around here and already start to pick out people. We've seen the premise guys leverage and work with some of the contact center guys to work with the cloud comms guys. We're seeing the hardware guys leverage some of their position. We've seen the collaboration software guys leverage their position. We've seen AWS announce partnerships with CRM and the contact center. So basically, all over this picture, we're seeing partnerships and relationships to build that broader solution for the customer. We're starting to see people like Dropbox. I know a number of you now are selling Dropbox as part of, I don't know where Dropbox got so small, but it's over there. Dropbox, we're starting to see people leveraging Dropbox into their environments already. So the one thing I think is really clear is you're going to have to partner now. Whether you're a service provider, whether you're a vendor, I could have put a whole list of partnerships, but just think to yourselves what you've heard in the last year about partnerships that have happened. Partnerships you'd have thought would never happen previously. And some of these, you can argue if they're partnerships or they're supply relationships. I don't really care. I'm just saying that these relationships are now happening to build these better solutions. And we haven't always been good in the traditional service provider community app partnership, actually. We used to have a very build-it-ourselves mentality, but that is changing. Obviously, the biggest partnership we've probably seen, or the most significant in this space, was via RingCentral. And just thought I'd give you my take on this, maybe. My take on this is a good deal for RingCentral, probably a deal that Avaya had to do for various pressing reasons, like their bankers at the door. But what's really interesting factor is I think this is all about the channel. So you probably know, and I get the numbers wrong, but RingCentral, they don't announce it now, but about 7% of their revenue is international. The rest, it's a North American company with a small piece of international revenue. Avaya is a very different beast. Avaya had something, I think it's 60 in total, but it's like 45 in EMEA, percent of its revenue international, and a series of channels. Now, we all know there's some challenges, because the other thing about this deal is that it's basically a master agent deal. So Ring get to sign the customers on their paper, and a lot of the guys in this room who are Avaya partners find that quite tough to get their heads around. So it's a interesting deal, but it brings, what it did for Ring was bring them international channel capability. But another example of a partnership we probably would never have expected to happen maybe a year or even 2 years ago. Would never have happened, right? So partnerships are going to happen, and we're going to see more of them. And the other thing is obviously is happening is M&A. So I had the pleasure, and you'll see them later. I think they may be still sleeping off. Is Dan in the room? I can't see him. I can't see anyway. Dan and Stein will be here later. Dan is the CEO of Destiny. I was with dinner with them last night, and Stein, who is the CEO of Enreach. As you may know, if you're not aware of those companies, they've made multiple acquisitions across Europe. So I'm not going to go into detail about all their acquisitions, but they are building a European presence. They are consolidating the market, both those businesses. And obviously, Gamma have made some announcements as well now, having bought in Holland originally, and now recently announcing a deal in Spain. So we are now seeing these period of European consolidation. Also, Soluno, who are one of our sponsors, have bought big in the Nordics, have bought in Holland. Saywan, a French company, is bought down in Spain. Evolve came from the US and bought our loved The Voice Factory here, but also Intel. So we are starting to see some people with consolidation. And there's even some people in this room, and I've got bankers ringing me nearly every day who want to grow and want to invest in this space. And you're going to hear later from my good friend Michael Quinn, who's running a panel on Q Advisors, who have been one of the main guys making this all happen, right? I've made pretty much all the deals in this space he or me, or mainly him, have had something to do with. So, we'll hear a lot later, and that's a really interesting piece to listen to. Also in the UK, we've seen some, and in Europe, we've seen some national consolidators. So Telco Switch has bought a few businesses, Telepliant, and there's other people I've missed off here, and you'll probably say, I should be up there. But GCI has made quite a few acquisitions, and we're seeing some national consolidation as well. And the other thing we're seeing is capability acquisition. So people, I've got the pleasure, as long as he wasn't on a Flybe plane, I haven't seen Alan yet, coming over from Ireland. He is going to be sitting down and doing Alan, who's the CEO of Blueface, is going to be sitting down and doing a fireside chat with me about the Comcast deal. So some of you will probably be interested in understanding why that happened and what went on there. So he's going to be here later. But we've seen a lot of acquisitions, Cisco buying AI very heavily to big, in very interesting businesses. I could go through all of these. Contact center is another big area, and there's loads more that I haven't listed. So we're seeing this happen because people are looking at how they build a broader solution, and they do that either by partnership, acquisition, or they build their own, of course, which is the other option. And you'll hear later, I think, from the VoIP Alliance. There's an alliance of people working on open source. They're going to talk downstairs later, who are looking at how they build capability together. So lots of interesting stuff going on. So I'm probably pretty boring on this subject, and well, I'm pretty boring in life, but on this subject particularly, is the know your own customer. This has never been a better time than you're going to have to know and understand how to segment the market, how to clarify your needs that you're addressing, and be creative with the solutions, right? Because you can't limit it to the technology stack you've got. You're going to have to build partnerships, and you're going to have to think out of the box to be successful. And then there's the whole area of you're going to have to be able to integrate. So last year when I was up here, I talked about if I was buying a platform, one of the things I'd be looking at is how do I ultimately integrate into that platform. That is going to be obviously one of the other key. Hopefully that's not Public Health England on the line. No, good. Shouldn't laugh really, but if you've been in my situation for 10 days, you would. Right. So, some of you, the smarter amongst you, may have noticed some changes downstairs and around what we're doing. And I just wanted to flag, because I think there's some parallels between what's going on in the industry and what we're going through as a business. So, you will have said today we have rebranded Cavell. Those smart amongst you will have noticed a different logo. Will have noticed some different colours around the place. Will have noticed a change maybe in the websites and things we've done, all happening today. But the change goes a bit further than that, and you're going to hear from some of the people. I've invested in some key areas, and us as a business have, with my colleagues, invested in some new areas. We've extended our team, focusing on cloud networking. Finbar joined us 6 months ago because we see that as a massive opportunity for you guys. So we started focusing more on analysis there. Some of you will recognize Patrick, who worked with our friends from UC Today. He's now joined us as looking specifically at customer engagement and collaboration. And when we talk about customer engagement, we look at CPaaS, we look at contact center, we're looking at reporting, all the things that are involved in that flow. And also, Francesca's now got some help on the marketing side and the events. So what we also did, and I think this is probably interesting for what you guys are going to have to do, we had to think a bit about our purpose and what we do as a business as a whole. So with the help of our friends from Sunfish, we've been working together on what our purpose is, and this is kind of what we think we do for you guys. So without making this too much of an advert, just have a quick look. When you see people in purple shirts, have a look at some of the other things we're doing. So you will know us maybe for an analyst and consulting side. We've spent a lot of our time this year doing due diligence, helping people sell and buy their business with the help of Michael and the Q Advisors gang and others. And our engineering services are probably the big secret that we have. So if you look when you look in your brochures, you'll see that we've been doing some work in the US for a UC provider where our professional services are focused on network, on data networking, cloud networking, not on the UC side at all. And we found service providers have not looked at that properly. So the way they've built their own internal networks means that that's probably where some of your biggest points of failure are. So you'll see an article where one of our engineers was working with a UC provider in the US. Well, we found some really interesting things which would make your eyes water. We've all been focused on the SBC and the voice and the piece out. We haven't necessarily been looking at our data networks. So I'd ask you to have a look at that. Yeah, so big focus on due diligence for us. And we have some upcoming events. Great to be in the events business right now. The cloud networking event, if you're interested from a service provider point of view, looking at SD-WAN, we're running an event in London, cross our fingers, towards the end of April on cloud networking. I think it's an area that you all should be looking at. M&A, we're working with Michael putting an event together later in the summer, depending on what's going on, and we'll be again in October. So that is the little advert, because I always get accused of not saying what we do. So we spent a lot of time. The business grew 60% last year. You'll see a new team. You'll see a new brand. You'll see a new set of people. And we're pretty proud of that and what we've achieved. And I'd ask you to spend some time talking to my colleagues. Mike, can you stand up a second? Mike runs he's my partner in business. He runs our engineering team. If you want to find out a bit about what we're doing on SD-WAN, him and Gail. Gail's not wearing a T-shirt yet because you're doing this. Gail's there. You can speak to them about that, and they'll give you some insight. So I'm pleased to say I'm dead on time.